Moving on to our next algorithm focusing about the gap analysis is shell sort algorithm. The first advanced sorting algorithm is this algorithm because it is usually used in top companies like MNCs, and whenever you get a technical round of interview, there is a chance or a probability that shell sort algorithm is usually asked. Why it is called as shell sorting algorithm is all because of it is named after the inventor named Donald Shell. This algorithm is based on insertion sort. If you know about the insertion sorting algorithm, then that is quite an easy task. But there is a big improvement over this basic algorithm of insertion sorting. What is that? Because this key concept of the algorithm is that it compares the distant elements first rather than the adjacent elements. So let's have a look about how is this shell sorting algorithm typically used. Let's analyze this sorting algorithm in step-by-step manner. See, as I've given, it is purely with respect to insertion sort, and shell sort has some kind of differential attributes with respect to insertion sorting algorithm. As given over here, this algorithm follows the comparison with the distant items. It is done in such a way like the key concept is like it compares the distant elements first rather than adjacent elements. And it is done in such a way like the formula for it is completely purely based on insertion sort. The elements that are far out of place and can be put in a place more efficiently using the scheme than by simply comparing the neighboring elements. As the algorithm loops through a dataset, the distance between each element decreases until when at the end of the dataset the algorithm is compared with the elements which are present in the adjacent way. So the first step is that it compares the distant items. Whatever the distant items is given over here, say for the gap analysis, say if I say for gap 3, then it compares if 6 is the 0th element, then it takes 0, 1, 2, 3. It compares itself with 2. The same way 5 compares with the third element associated to it. Like the counter of the index of 5 with plus 3 is 8. So in that way it starts comparing. As you can see in this figure also, you can see that 6 is being compared with 3, and later we have the attribute of 2 being compared with 7, and then we get 1 as the smallest element by checking out the gap sequence. So first functionality or step number 1 for shell sorting algorithm is that it compares the distant items. Then afterwards is like increment sequence. Why? Because it completely works on defining a gap sequence that indicates how far apart compared elements are when starting the sorting process. The gap sequence can be defined dynamically, but most for the practical questions. You can predefine the gap sequence, the algorithm which it will be used. There are several published gap sequences that produce different results. So based on that, this algorithm increments the particular sequence for the adjacent elements to be calculated. And then we have the next part is that it checks after each phase. Like as I mentioned over here, if I take a gap sequence of 3, then I compare it and automatically reshuffle it. Again I take a gap sequence of 2, then gap sequence of 1, and at the end you will see that all the elements with the help of shell sorting algorithm is sorted properly. So I would repeat, step number 1 is like comparing the distant items. Then we have the increment sequence, which means that once the distant items are properly arranged as per the gap, like now I have arranged with the help of gap 3, then I enter gap 2 and then 1. So automatically I increment the sequence because I move from 6 to 5 and then to 3 and then to 2 and then to 8 and so on. And after that it checks the phase. So this is the typical logic behind this algorithm. Now the main important question which comes in your mind, like what is usually asked in the technical round with respect to this sorting algorithm? They usually ask you with the logic. They will tell you like explain it with the help of an array. Then you have to explain that with the help of an array, and for that we will move on to our next chapter where we will analyze about this sorting algorithm with the particular pictorial format so that you will get a better understanding like how we can explain it in the technical round. Basically the main focus is that you should be clear with the logic behind this sorting algorithm. Let it be for any algorithm, not only shell sort. It can be a bubble sort algorithm, a quick sort, merge sort, or anything. So once you're clear with the logic part, they can tell you with the array, and even they can tell you to code on it in any language. So for that, next chapter we'll understand about the pictorial representation, that is the basic explanation of this sorting algorithm, and we will understand the implementation of the sorting algorithm with the help of JavaScript. Now with the help of this picture, we'll have the complete analysis for algorithm, specifically with respect to shell sort. So here we'll declare a function which will have the parameter included in it as an array. The next thing is that it will call for a variable, and the variable will have a value which is divided by 2. So it will take an array length divided by 2, and after that it will increment this particular value, and it will check that if increment is greater than 0. If I see that the increment is greater than 0, then I calculate it with the help of a for loop like I equals increment, I less than array.length. And if I see that if it is proper, then I just swap both the elements with the help of a temporary variable, and accordingly I print the output. On the other hand, if I see the increment which is not greater than 0, in such a case it returns an array, which means that there is no elements present in it, or I can say that the elements present in it is not defined properly, or we can say it is a blank array. So it automatically terminates the flowchart. Here on the other hand, if I see I is less than array.length, if it is proper, then automatically it is swapped with the distant elements relationship. But here if I see that the element I or the index is not less than array.length, then we increment it by 2, and on the other hand also if I get that this is proper, then we increment by 1. On the other hand, if I get it as it's not the proper incrementation as the way it is needed, in such a scenario, it will increment it with the help of passInt function, and this increment will be divided by 11. This is more complicated way, but in the simple understanding, you can terminate automatically if I see that the array length is not as per my requirement. Once the swapping is done successfully, it automatically terminates the loop and it increments it. And this keeps on happening until we get all the sorted values arranged in the proper manner. So this is how is the algorithm analysis of shell sort takes place. You can explain in the interview with the help of a small flowchart like the way I have did it over here. Not more complicated as per your understanding. If you describe your coding structure with a pseudocode and a flowchart, that would be another plus point. So let's move on to the next chapter for understanding shell sort in a deeper way. Let's get started with the manipulation of shell sort algorithm. As you see over here, these are the number of elements which are present in the array. The most important thing is that we will divide it accordingly. So we have 61, 109, 149, 111, 34, 2, 24, 119, 122, 125, 27 and 145 in our array. Now the next thing, as it is mentioned, shell sort works with the gap. The number of elements is 12, we'll divide it by 2, and that's what we get the answer as 6. So now we will take a gap of 6 elements and sort it accordingly. Say the gap of 6 elements for 61 and 24. So as you can see, 24 is the number which is lesser than 61, then it is swapped accordingly. So we will swap these two numbers, 24 and 61. Taking the gap of 6 with 109 and 119, as 109 is lesser than 119, so it is in the proper sequence, so it is mentioned in the same place. After that, the next gap sequence is for 149 and 122. As 122 is greater than 149, it is swapped in that particular sequence. Then comes 111 and 125. 111 is lesser than 125, so it is kept in the same way as it is needed. After that comes 34 and 27. As 27 is lesser than 34, it is swapped in that particular sequence. Then comes 2 and 145. So 2 is lesser than 145, so it is properly mentioned in that sequence and it is taken in that place. After that, the next gap sequence is 6 divided by 2, which is equal to 3. So we'll take 3 elements of the gap sequence. So we have 24 and 111. So here we will take it in that order. 24 is lesser than 111, which is proper. 109 and 27. So as it is mentioned over here. So 27 will take a place of 109. And then comes 122 and 2. So 2 is again swapped. After that comes 111 and 61. And 61 is again swapped with 111. Then comes 109. So now it is important to understand with the gap sequence of the other elements also. So it is 109 and 119. It is in the proper sequence order. Then after that comes 122 and 149. So 122 is lesser than 149. So it is in the same way it is needed. So no change in this number position. Then comes 111 and 125. It is again in the same way. After that comes 119 and 34. As 34 is lesser than 119, it is swapped. Now 34 is compared with the previous elements also, and accordingly it is swapped with the position which is next to 27, because now it is important that every elements with the gap sequence of 3 is being properly positioned in that manner. Then after that comes 149 and 145. So 145 is placed in that position which it occupies by 149. Now understanding the next gap sequence which is important. So we had a gap sequence of 3. Now 3 divided by 2 corresponds to a gap sequence of 1. So alternate successive numbers will be calculated over here. So now we have 24 and 27. So 27 will be maintained over there. Then comes 2 and 27. So 2 will be mentioned in that position. After that 2 will take a position in initial way because 2 is lesser than 27. Similarly, we will calculate with 61 and 34. So 34 will be taken a position. Now comparing 27 with 34, 27 is lesser than 34, so it will be in the proper way. Then comes 61 and 122, which is proper. Then 111 and 122, it is again swapped. Then 61 is compared with 111, which is proper, because 61 is lesser than 111, so it is mentioned in the proper sequence as it is needed. Then comes 122 and 109. 109 is placed in the position which is lesser than 122. So now 109 is again compared with 111. As you can see, 109 is less than 111. It is again swapped to that particular position. So because we are checking with a gap sequence of 1 with respect to shell sort. Then comes 61 and 109, which is proper. We compare it with the earlier elements also. Now comes 122 and 145, which is again proper because 122 is lesser than 145. After that comes 145 and 125. As 125 is lesser than 145, it should be swapped in that particular order because we need to get the number arranged in that order. So 125 is placed before, then 122 is compared with 125, and again it is swapped. 119 is again compared with the next elements, and we see that 119 is placed in the position which is next to 111. Similar way we calculate with 145 and 149. So accordingly we see that the elements are now arranged in the proper ascending order with the gap sequence formula, like gap sequence algorithm, which is the shell sort algorithm. So you can say now the elements are properly in the sorted order in the ascending manner with 2, 24, 27, 34, 61, 109, 111, 119, 122, and next comes this 125, and after that comes 145, and later we get 149. So accordingly the elements are arranged in the proper sequencing order, as you can see it over here. So we have our sorted element with respect to shell sort algorithm. So let's move on to our next chapter for the implementation of shell sort in JavaScript. Now in our editor brackets, we saw implementation of quick sort and merge sort. Now we'll have a look on the implementation of shell sort. So for that we'll create a new file, and the new file will be created and it will be saved inside our sorting algorithms folder, which we have. So inside sorting algorithms, I'll save the file name as shellsort.js. Now inside this we'll include the complete logic as the way we had declaration, or we declared in our last algorithm through our flowchart. So whenever an interviewer asks, you can start it with a pseudo code, but now I'm completely focusing on the code base level. Instead of getting deep into pseudo code and algorithm, like showing it through flowchart, you can opt any one. Either you can show it with the help of a flowchart and then you can move to the coding level. So for that, let's start it over here. Here I create a function, shell sort, with an array. And then I'll create the variable increment equals, here I will just include a enter mark. So this marks my end of the function, and now inside this variable I'll mark it as the length divided by 2. After this I'll say while increment is greater than 0, in this scenario it will check for I equals increment. It follows the same way as we had a look in our flowchart. So similar thing we'll do here. While it will check a condition that increment is greater than 0, it will add for a for loop where for I equals increment I less than array dot length I plus plus. Now what it will do? It will create another variable, say j equals I, setting up an assignment operator in both the cases. This you can explain it to your interviewer. If he asks for why you are taking 2 loops, in that scenario you can say that in first condition I am assigning the increment operator, and that condition is testing that if the increment is greater than 0, and next is like with the help of the increment I am passing up the value or swapping the value with the distant available numbers. So now let's start it with var temp. Now this is the complete logic about swapping. So here I'll say var temp as array of I, and then later I'll say while j greater than or equal to increment, and then I'll take a array which says j minus increment, and it will check that if it is greater than temp. Now after this I'll make the swapping parameters arranged in this way. Array of j equals array of j minus 1. And after this I'll mention, instead here you can also take j minus increment because we are just swapping it with the help of the increment basis. If you remember the sorting algorithm, like what all steps were needed. So that steps we are following over here. Now I'll decrement this j value because it is reducing the gap. This is basically with respect to the gap analysis. So it will decrement with respect to the increment value. After this I have done with this loop. Now I'll set array of j equals temp. Now this part has been done. I have ended with one while loop. This is this while loop. Now after the while loop, what is the next part? I need to check it with the condition. So I'll say if increment equals 2, then I'll set as increment equals 1. Okay. If I see the increment is like a value with 2, then I will set it as 1, or else if the other scenario is there, then I will make the other type of increment. This logic can be changed from your end, but I am doing with the help of pass in function. Pass in increment into 5 divided by 11. Okay. Now after this, what is the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to return this array. So this part is done. Now after this, I'm going to print the console. So the console part will be presented over here as console shell sort with the value. For that, or we can do one thing. Instead of this scenario, we can create a variable. That would be more even better, so that a user can understand that the array is properly sorted. So I'll create a variable array with values 3, 0, 2, 5. I'm taking random values, then -1, then 4, then 1. Now after this, I'm going to do a cell. I'll print this particular array in my console, and then later we will again call for this cell sort algorithm, and here I'll send the parameter of an array. I can declare here this as an array 1, and here you can print it, and then this one over here, because I'm following the standard conventions in such a way like one variable declared is not repeated again. and after that I'll print the console, or I can just print it with the help of console as shell sort array. Okay. Now the next step is like we need to create an HTML file so that we can have an access to this JavaScript. So let's create an HTML file. Save it inside the sorting algorithm. Name will be shell sort.html. Now let's start it with the doc type. This is my doc type, HTML. Later we'll have the HTML tag. And after that, I'll include one more thing over here is the head section. So I'll say head, and inside head we'll have the meta tag, meta, caset as UTF-8, and after that we'll have a look on the, as the editor is quite delicate to use, so use it in the proper way. Then we'll have title. The title mentions shell sorting algorithm. Okay. Now the head tag is done completely. Let's have a look in our body tag. And inside this I'll have the H3 tag, which displays the sorting algorithm in the proper way. When asked in interview, this is the proper example to depict it with the help of a JavaScript functionality. And after this we have the script. So we are going to call our script. So script src shell sort.js. So this part is completed. We'll end with the script. Now we need to run our particular program. So let's run it with the help of our live connector, the live preview which we have in our brackets. So this will open our browser. It will take a while because it is connecting. Now it is done. Let's go to our console. Now let's move into our console. We'll call for the console. Here you will get the output which is desired. First array which I am getting over here is the array we passed it, like -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. And now it is being sorted with this value that is present over here. And it is sorted in the desired way that is needed. So that is the plus point with respect to the sorting algorithm. If you check it out, the sorting is successful, and if the interviewer tells you like if the sorting was successful with the help of gap analysis, then you can print the gap analysis through console. One more important point. Why are we considering only console with respect to JavaScript? I will tell you that JavaScript is purely a client-side scripting language. So instead of showing it on the screen or something, we maintain our main outputs or some kind of a pseudocode output when it comes to technical round of interview through console. Because console is interdependent with whatever the mechanism is being designed with model and view. Whatever you want to print it and verify, like a simple debugging test or something, then that can be very easily possible with the help of console. It's like a cakewalk. So we should focus in that way. Like you can tell this to the interviewer, like we are focusing on one platform which is interdependent for now, because we can easily show this part over here in the browser also, but it's better to see it in console just to verify that whether it is working or not. But once we get that it is working properly, then you can use the same mechanism and show the output as and where which is needed. It can be in your panel, it can be in a typical input box or a label or something. So this was the complete understanding of the shell sort algorithm. In the next chapter, we'll understand a different type of a sorting technique usually observed in binary search trees, which is called as heap sort.